Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and ITY video. Today I'm joined by Andy Cunningham. He is the Managing Director of Australia and New Zealand for Autodesk. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Great to be here.
Now, I understand that it's the last day of the conference. We'll get onto that in a moment. But to paraphrase the description of the Autodesk University AU 2020 conference, which is halfway through its third and last day as we speak, Autodesk is the design and make company for innovators everywhere who reimagine what's possible. So can you please tell us, what does design and making things mean in 2020, given so many developments and advances, and how both can be used to address real world issues ranging from climate change to energy conservation and to workplaces of the future and more?
Sure, Alex, happy to. Look, we make software that helps people design with design challenges every day. That's the core essence of what we do. Whether that's the building or the home that you're sitting in right now, the car that you potentially drove or the bike you rode this morning, the laptop you may be looking at, the pen you're holding, there's a fair chance we had something to do with the design and or making of that product. We're very much known for the CAD space with our AutoCAD product, and then into the architectural space with some of the solutions there. But really, Autodesk spans a range of industries in what we address and how we help people design and make in different ways. And this year, like no other, has accelerated a whole lot of things and changed a whole lot of things. I think we saw a real change in the way design and manufacturing was progressing anyway. We've had this small thing called a global pandemic of COVID-19, which has just rapidly accelerated the need for so many different changes in so many different industries. At the heart of that, we believe, and I guess to answer your question, the three things that really are altering or changing in the design space. The first is automation. And we have always been a strong believer in automation, it's really accelerating in the current environment. And really, it gives us the opportunity to make things better, in better ways and more meaningful ways, through artificial intelligence, through robotics, through 3D printing, and these other emerging technologies. We're seeing a lot of that accelerate, in particular in Asia Pacific. The robot count, and there is such a thing, or robot density, is rising fast across our region or our geography here. So our software is looking at harnessing those emerging technologies. How do we embrace additive manufacturing and bring the smarts, the data intelligence, etc., to that? So that 3D printing isn't just printing cool keyrings for your kids, but it's allowing rapid customization, rapid on-site manufacturing, and really changing the face of the different industries that we address. And that really gives people the ability to work quickly, and as I said, really address the rapid changing environment that we see at the moment on the automation space. The next is sustainability. We I think more than ever, sustainability's come to the fore at the moment, and making a positive impact on the world. And it's funny how, again, the immediate impacts of COVID, we're all of a sudden using disposable coffee cups again, right? And it was amazing how quickly we went from
the keep cup to the give me the fresh cup.
Absolutely, right. And I get that. That's a knee-jerk reaction. We all went through that, right? And I think as industry settle, as sentiment settle, etc., things come back to a survival, but then a longer viewpoint. The interesting thing about sustainability come back to the fore is, we're under cost pressures at the moment like we've never seen before. Whether you're an organization surviving cash flow impacts, whether your government's trying to provide funding for citizens and for people, money is tight, and money is under scrutiny more than ever before. The thing sustainability brings to this equation, and you can argue, is it right or wrong that it's a factor of money? Unfortunately, sometimes that's what it comes down to. Sustainability addresses waste, right? There is so much waste in what we design and make at the moment. There's some staggering facts. Around 30% of all global waste comes from construction. Right? And if you think about it, if you've done any sort of renovation or building project on your home, you pay for things to get brought to your house. You pay for things to get chopped up. You have that waste that you pay then to get taken away, right? That happens en masse around the planet every day, and 30% of all that waste comes from construction. The other staggering stat is 70% of all spare parts are never used.
Really?
So you think about the spare parts for your Commodore, your Falcon, your bicycle, your blender, whatever that may be. There's these spare part supplies all around the world with waste, and that's then waste in raw materials, waste in warehouse space, it's a staggering amount of waste of time and money. So our approach to sustainability is really, about creating tools that improve sustainability through the entire project or through the entire product's life cycle. So whether it's, when you design the phone, design it smarter, the materials that go into it, the disposal of it, the use of it, and really trying to look at that holistic thing. So we're really encouraging our teams, our customers, to innovate with sustainability in mind. The third piece in 2020, what we're seeing change is digital transformation. And that is probably the biggest accelerant, and the different elements of what being digital means to different organizations. Mm-hmm. If I think about what we do as Autodesk, many years ago, we digitized. That was when people put down these things and drawing boards and rulers and picked up a mouse instead. And that's digitization. What we're now seeing is the digitalization, and there's a nuance in those two words there, of that process. And that's what digital transformation is. It's not just creating digital content. It's how do you apply that content to your workflow, your people, your customers, your stakeholders in everything that you do. So it's not actually about the content or the authoring of content. It's how it's managed, through an organization, whether that's a retail environment that's trying to, appeal to end customers, whether it's a construction company that's trying to drive safety on the construction site, etc. The one thing we need to do as a region is embrace and realize the benefits of digital transformation, and what that brings to the Australian-New Zealand market.
So a number of these things must have been foundational themes at the conference, but what were some of the other big announcements at the conference? And surely, given the fact that you no longer have to fly thousands of people to Las Vegas and it's a global conference, you must have much better reach this year, and presumably you're expecting even better results than you would otherwise.
Sure. Look, I guess to address the conference itself, our biggest physical conference has had 20,000 people in Las Vegas. This year, we've got 100,000 registrants for Autodesk University worldwide, and so that's a factor of 5. Over almost 25,000 have just come from Asia Pacific alone. Right? So as far as the scale and the reach, and the fact that people don't have to fly, people can digest in their own time zone at their own pace. As you mentioned, it's day 3 now. It doesn't mean you missed it, because all that content is there in perpetuity, ready for you to digest. So there's a lot that's to say about this. I think when we get back to whatever that new normal is, it'll be more of a balance. So we always did stream Autodesk University, but the fact of the reach and what this content gives us now, it will change the way we reach our customers. Just like a lot of companies are looking at the way they reach their stakeholders and customers as well. Yeah. Some of the announcements, as generative design is a huge part of how we the message that we're taking to the market and how we harness artificial intelligence, sustainable design, and the different elements of innovation there. There's been some great announcements this week. Philip Stark announced an artificial intelligence designed chair, for example. And he's a famous furniture and architectural designer. A bit of a purist that said he'd never use a computer because he could design faster than a computer could. Yeah. And what actually prompted him was when Kasparov got beaten by Big Blue in the chess game all those years ago, and it's opened his mind to maybe having a look at doing things differently. So he's used or partnered with Autodesk Research, used generative design, because he had the thought of, it's a bit similar to the description I gave earlier. He had the thought of, I've only got so many ideas in my head. Let's have a look at what else something can bring. So that was one. We announced a great collaboration with Hyundai, the car maker. So we're working with them on a futuristic walking car concept. So think Bumblebee from Transformers, right? Yeah. Quite literally. So it's a cross between a car and a robot to address things like mobility needs. So a car or a wheelchair is one thing, fantastic. How do you get up those stairs if there's no ramp? How do you reach when there's no ladder? Those sorts of elements. And so the Elevate, mobility concept is what we're working with Hyundai on. Using generative design in different ways to approach these quite difficult solutions. We did an announcement with Decathlon, the French sports manufacturer, particularly known for their bicycles, and their ability to rapidly customize components of their sporting equipment or their bicycles. So again, this used to be only in the reach of the few. Now it's in the reach of many, where you can actually go and have a customized bicycle component for higher performance. It's a bit like Formula One, where they custom the seat to every single driver and every car is different. Well, maybe it's not million dollars in that sense, but that level of customization is coming down to the everyday person in lots of equipment, lots of things we do. That was some of the sort of partnership in investments, I guess, or announcements that were made. But there are also a lot of the product announcements as well. That we can certainly go down that path if you're interested.
Sure. Well, I mean, just give us the short version. I mean, a lot of people might remember Autodesk, for AutoCAD, for architects, but over the last 20 plus years, I mean, the company's grown and blossomed into designing and making just about anything.
Yep, you're dead right. And I think it's beyond just, as I said, it's important you said, there's the design and there's the make component. I think we were originally known for, as you say, drafting lines and circles and then architecture. But always in the design space. And that's extending, don't get me wrong, we're doing more and more, as I said, around generative design and changing the way people design, but we're really looking at the way people make and manage things as well. So we call it the future of making, and it extends for the whole lot. So we've got a wide portfolio, as I mentioned. Yes, architecture, also engineering, also construction, the manufacturing space, and the media and entertainment space. I guess to address the architecture space first, we announced this week a digital twin offering known as Autodesk Tandem, and this is really looking at how we connect the physical and the digital world. So for a long time we've been designing in 2D and then 3D and then building information modeling around these 3D models, which are a digital representation of the real world. Tandem lets us really try and connect those two so that we can then review real-time operations. Is the building performing to the way its design intent was? And building information modeling is the foundation of that, but then Tandem connects that to the real world at that next level. So that was one announcement. In the construction space, a lot of announcements around Autodesk Construction Cloud, some rebranding around some products and some extension of the products there. We've made a lot of acquisitions in the last year or two. With Assemble, with PlanGrid, etc., that were announced at previous Autodesk universities. And what we've announced this year is really the aggregation of that product set to take our offerings in the construction and cloud space to the next level of integration and impact. So there's those sorts of product announcements. As you mentioned, there was the announcement with
Spacemaker?
With Decathlon and with I'm just struggling for the word there. Yes, which is really then looking at how do we bring the capability that we've had, again, traditionally in the architectural space to urban planning as well, at the concept level. So how do we now allow people to rapidly design concepts, design urban planning, design spaces with these different sort of requirements or elements in mind? Everybody wants a smart city. Most definitely, and I think Spacemaker will certainly bring that. We spent $240 million on Spacemaker. It's a significant investment, but you're right. Everyone does want that smart city. The thing we're seeing though with smart cities, just to I guess pull on that thread that you mentioned, is it's not just about the smart city at a macro level. Sometimes it's smart precincts. Sometimes it's smart objects. And so it's really the integration of a lot of those different levels. I think there's smart city aspirational plans or plans in place, but you're right. How do you have a smart park, a smart bench, a smart shopping center? And again, I'll pull it back to COVID because it's so relevant. COVID is changing the way that we look at these physical spaces. And so, as I said, smart city is one thing, but how do you design a smart shopping center or a smart train station so that you've got minimal traffic congestion, minimal occupancy congestion, etc., to enable the health and safety requirements that we've got in place today. So, just on Smart Spacemaker, it's not available in ANZ yet, but we're really excited to be exploring what that brings to our offering, and then bringing that to the local regions as well. So, like a lot of our offerings, like Assemble, for example, last year wasn't initially available in the ANZ market. We've very quickly looked and analysed that and bringing in that. So we'll be looking at Spacemaker as well and seeing what we can do to bring it to ANZ as soon as possible. Sure. Now, I always like to finish with 3 questions. And the first one is just simply to look into the future. And one of the obvious futures is going to be all of these augmented reality glasses. And I'm assuming that your scientists and researchers are already designing products that are going to take into account the 4th dimension of this digital world. So you're looking at something inside your smart shopping center and you've got your AR glasses on, and there's all this extra information that has to be designed to not get into the way of your face
and the things you're looking at. And what sort of work is Autodesk doing to look towards 2030 to these other technologies so that you can continue staying ahead of the curve?
Sure. I mean, certainly, that example you gave is exactly some of the work that we're doing. So, we look at the 3D, obviously, in the physical space and the design space. We're looking at 4D in time, 5D in cost, and then you get to 6D, 7D in augmented reality, etc. But that example is exactly the case. It's a bit like, you think of the movie Terminator years ago when he put the glasses on and he got the read of what's happening. That's reality now with some of the smart helmets that we've got out there, where you've got plant workers or maintenance workers in place that can have an augmented reality screen in front of them, and they can look at componentry that will realize RFID tags and bring out component information and service information on the fly. So that sort of stuff is actually real. So the more I talk to people and look at what we're doing, the things that were Star Wars and science fiction not that long ago are real now. And to your point, we're looking at what does the future bring in the next 10 years. Geez, the change we've seen this year is really a springboard for what we'll see over the next 10 years, because the things that were so taken for granted and so required this year, a construction site, a factory floor, a production studio, they're all off limits or have been off limits in the large parts around the world. So we've had to throw out the entire basis of the physical basis of the way we used to design and make, and find new ways of doing things. And so we're orchestrating teams, digitally. We're creating virtual work environments. You and I right now are doing this over Zoom versus sitting perhaps in a studio or a coffee shop. And so that shifting demand has been accelerated this year. We'll see that increase. So with the acquisition of Spacemaker, that was certainly one element of that. I think the way forward over the next 10 years and the space that we're looking at, the common data environment is critical. And that's a lot of the investments we're making around what you've seen around Autodesk Construction Cloud, but also a lot of the authoring products will really look towards that common data environment as a critical piece. And that's not just from an Autodesk point of view, that's from a business point of view and from a project lifecycle point of view as well. So that single source of truth, that single point of convergence, that's what we're looking at. And then having obviously the right authoring tools and the right personas in place so that you shouldn't have to worry about whether you're a plumbing engineer, a HVAC, air conditioning engineer, a structural engineer. What tool do I use? Do I use product A, B, or C? Do I use version D, E, or F of the data? You shouldn't have to worry about that. You should come in as you, knowing what you need to do. And the common data environment and the software should take care of the interface, the tool set, and the right version control of what you need to do to get your job done. That's the sort of aspiration that we're looking at in common data environments. And I think that's what we'll really see accelerate, if not in the next 10 years, certainly over the next 3 to 5.
Well, it's obviously a good thing that if you're trying to design the future, that you're a company that makes design tools. So that's very handy.
Goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
That's right. So my second last question is just to sort of change gears for a second before the last question, which is simply to ask you if you could please share some of the best advice you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
I think for me, and again, I pull it back to what we've all experienced this year. We're all people, and I think what we've seen this year, it's a great leveler. It doesn't matter where you're located, whether you're financially well off, struggling in Australia or in the US, whatever. What we've all dealt with this year has absolutely leveled the playing field, for all of us, and I think it's given us a commonality and a bond. So for me, the best piece of advice I've received and I can give, we're all people at the end of the day. We've got strengths, we've got weaknesses, we've got hopes, we've got dreams, we've got fears, so never forget that. And even in business, it's still a person on the other end of the phone, the Zoom, or the boardroom table, and the relationships that we create, or the teams that we're on, when you have respect, when you protect each other, when you stand up for each other, they're the most successful, relationships and business teams that I've ever been in. So for me, we're all people at the end of the day. Never forget that.
So what's your final message to ITWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future Autodesk customers and university, entrants and applicants?
Sure, Alex. Again, the year we've gone through, difficult times is an understatement. Unexpected is an understatement as well. If you look back to history, a lot of the greatest innovations have come out of adversity or diverse situations. Whether that's water sanitization, paving of roads, all these sorts of things, penicillin. It's all in times of trouble, it sparks innovation. So, we're really, trying to harness the ingenuity of the human brain with the technology that's out there to reimagine how people create and make things. There's a lot of fear that automation and robots will, take away jobs. That's not what this is about. We're trying to make jobs, safer in certain field environments, but really changing the productivity of how people work most definitely. At Autodesk, we're looking to empower innovation. That's what we do at the core. With the tools that we've got to design the future, to use data to make smarter decisions, to make more sustainable products, and really provide the information that decision makers and makers need to make the right decisions for their company, for their people, and for the planet ultimately. And really looking at inspiring that innovation and applying technology right across the world.
Well, Andy, you've got a few more hours of Autodesk University Day 3 to go, so please enjoy the rest of the conference, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
We'd love to, Alex. Thanks, and for everyone, take care, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks all.
Thank you.